When we talk about curses and prophecies, we are touching on a theme that permeates human history and the culture of societies. Curses are essentially wishes or statements that invoke a negative consequence, often involving divine or supernatural punishment. On the other hand, prophecies are predictions about future events, usually attributed to mystical or divine figures. These concepts are intertwined in such a way that, in many mythological accounts, a curse can be seen as the materialization of a prophecy that has been announced. In many cultures, curses and prophecies play a fundamental role in how people perceive fate and free will. They are told in stories of gods and heroes, and most of us have heard a tale about someone who, by ignoring a warning or prediction, ended up in tragic situations. It is almost as if, by disregarding the signs of the universe, the person was sealing his or her own fate. Personally, I have always been fascinated by the way these narratives shape our lives. The idea that words can have such profound power is something that, on some level, resonates with all of us. As I reflect on this, I can't help but think of the countless times a phrase or piece of advice has guided me through crucial moments. Like curses and prophecies, our words carry weight, and we need to be careful about what we say. In addition, curses often reflect moral and ethical issues, serving as warnings about undesirable behavior. Throughout history, societies have used these narratives to teach and reinforce values, creating a connection between the sacred and the everyday. Therefore, understanding curses and prophecies is not just an intellectual exercise. It is a way of looking at the human condition itself and how we deal with the uncertainty of the future. This understanding is not exclusive to one culture or one time. From Greek tragedies, where characters like Oedipus were tragically marked by prophecies, to contemporary stories that still echo these themes, we see that the belief in greater forces that govern our lives is a constant. As we examine these issues, we begin to see how, in many cases, people become the protagonists of their own stories, even though they are, in some ways, trapped in a script that seems to have been written before they were born. In the end, the definition of curses and prophecies is just the gateway to a universe of meanings and interpretations. It is not just about things that happen. It is also about how these narratives shape the way we understand life, destiny, and the consequences of our choices. They are always present, even if hidden in the routine of everyday life, waiting for us to pause and reflect on what we really believe and how it affects us. When we examine the relationship between curses and prophecies throughout history, we find a vast array of events that seem to be intrinsically linked to these beliefs. A notable example is the famous curse of the Stuart family of Scotland. King James VI, after losing the throne, made a pact that, according to legend, would bring a curse upon his descendants. This situation culminated in a series of tragedies that marked the dynasty, including premature deaths and political upheavals that affected not only the family but also the history of Scotland. On the other hand, we have the prophecy of Nostradamus, one of the most famous seers in history. He made predictions about future events that, in many cases, came true. For example, his famous prediction about the French Revolution and the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte is often cited as an example of how prophecies can echo through history and influence people's behavior. When I read about these prophecies, I can't help but feel fascinated by the way they shape collective perception and drive action at critical moments. Another case worth mentioning is the curse of Tutankhamun. It is believed that the discovery of the pharaoh's tomb in 1922 brought with it a series of mysterious deaths and misfortunes for the archaeologists involved. This narrative became popular, leading many people to believe that the curse was real. What makes this story even more intriguing is how fear and anticipation surrounding curses can influence decisions. I know people who, upon hearing stories like this, begin to act with caution and even avoid certain historical sites or artifacts as a form of protection. Furthermore, the case of King Louis XIV of France is also emblematic. He was involved in a series of wars and conflicts that, according to some accounts, were attributed to a prophecy that predicted his downfall. Belief in the inevitability of this prophecy led to decisions that ultimately contributed to his fate. Agic. This relationship between belief and action is something we often overlook, but it has profound implications for our daily lives. These historical examples show us how curses and prophecies have a unique ability to influence not only the fate of individuals, but also entire nations. Belief in a curse can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy, where people's actions are shaped by an expectation of doom. This connection between belief and reality is a fascinating aspect of human behavior. Finally, as I reflect on these historical events, I realize that, even in modern times, belief in curses and prophecies continues to play a significant role. Many people still find themselves influenced by these narratives, which permeate popular culture and traditions, generating a continuous cycle of belief and behavior. It is interesting to note how history repeats itself, and how, even in such a technologically advanced world, old beliefs still have power over our actions and decisions. This ancient wisdom, passed down through time, invites us to reflect on our own beliefs and how they shape our reality. Curses and prophecies often have a cyclical aspect that seems to repeat itself over time, creating a pattern of tragedies that affect not only individuals, but also entire generations. This phenomenon is fascinating and, at the same time, disturbing. Personally, when studying these issues, I realize that there is a deep symbolism that invites us to reflect on human nature and the consequences of our actions. To illustrate this cycle, we can think of families that, over the years, face inexplicable tragedies. Often, these misfortunes are attributed to a curse that, according to popular belief, was cast on their ancestors. A classic example is the story of the Atreus family in Greek mythology, who, after a series of betrayals, murders, and disagreements, found themselves trapped in a cycle of violence that continued for generations. History teaches us that thoughtless actions can have repercussions that echo through time, affecting not only those who commit them, but also their descendants. This cycle is not just a matter of old stories. In real life, many of us know cases where family tragedies repeat themselves. A person may lose a child abruptly, and years later, another family member faces a similar situation. This raises profound questions about fate and free will. Are we really doomed to repeat the mistakes of our ancestors? Or is there a lesson to be learned that can break this cycle? As a spiritual authority, I feel that this repetition of tragedies can be seen as a wake-up call. It is a reminder to look within and examine our actions and the patterns we have established in our lives. When we understand what led our families to these situations, we can break the cycle. Self-awareness is a powerful tool. It allows us to make wiser, more intentional decisions, preventing history from repeating itself. In addition, the connection between curses, tragedies, and culture is fascinating. Many cultures have their own versions of stories about curses that perpetuate themselves. In African tradition, for example, there are many narratives about cursed families struggling to thrive. These stories not only serve as cautionary tales, but also reflect folk wisdom passed down from generation to generation so that we can learn from the mistakes of others. Finally, it is important to remember that while these narratives are often dark, they also offer space for hope and transformation. When we encounter these cycles of tragedy, we have the opportunity to do things differently, to rewrite our stories, and to choose a path that leads to healing and growth. When we come together to explore these themes, we can discover that while curses and prophecies may be part of our cultural heritage, it is we who have the power to shape our destiny. It is essential that by understanding the patterns of the past, we strive to create a future where light and wisdom prevail over the shadows of tragedy. Curses and prophecies have had a profound impact on the cultures of diverse peoples throughout history. Since ancient times, these narratives have shaped not only the way communities see themselves, but also the decisions they make. What fascinates me is how these stories transcend time and continue to resonate today. When we talk about culture, we are talking about a set of beliefs, values and traditions that are passed down from generation to generation, and curses and prophecies, by their very nature, tend to be told and retold, often acquiring new layers of meaning. A clear example of this influence culturally, curses are portrayed in literature and film. In fairy tales, we often find characters who face curses cast by witches or supernatural beings. These stories often have a moral, reflecting the concerns and values of the society that created them. As we explore these narratives, we realize that curses are not just punishments, but also opportunities for growth and transformation. They teach us about the consequences of our actions, and this connects directly to human experiences. Often, when I hear a story about a curse, I feel a connection to the internal struggle that each of us faces throughout our lives. In addition, prophecies also play a crucial role in shaping cultural identity. They are often seen as warnings or premonitions that can direct the behavior of a community. For example, in some cultures, people are expected to act on prophecies in order to avoid disasters or achieve a better future. This expectation generates a sense of collective responsibility, where each individual feels that their role is crucial in carrying out or preventing what has been predicted. It's fascinating to think about how this shapes not only the individual psyche, but also the dynamics of entire groups. When we look back at history, we can see that many significant events have been interpreted in light of curses and prophecies. Wars, natural disasters, and social crises are often associated with predictions that have become part of the cultural narrative. This not only creates a context for these events, but also provides a sense of control in chaotic situations. People seek to understand the inexplicable, and curses and prophecies offer a way to make sense of suffering and uncertainty. Another important point to consider is how curses can manifest themselves in traditions and rituals. Many cultures have specific practices for breaking a curse or appeasing a prophecy. These can include purification rituals, offerings, or even collective ceremonies. These practices not only reflect a belief in the efficacy of curses, but also reinforce community bonds. By participating in a ritual, people feel connected to something larger, to a tradition that transcends time. Finally, when reflecting on the cultural influence of curses and prophecies, it is essential to recognize that, even in a modern and skeptical society, these topics still find space in everyday conversations. Books, films, and even social networks are full of references to these stories, showing that in one way or another, they continue to touch our imagination. Thus, curses and prophecies are not mere curiosities of the past, but rather living and pulsating components of contemporary culture. Therefore, when we explore these narratives, we find not only cautionary tales, but also valuable lessons about the human condition. Another point to be considered is how belief in curses influences human behavior. Many people, even if they do not fully believe in them, may act differently when faced with a prophecy or a curse. This relates directly to the concept of self-fulfilling prophecy, where expectations become reality. When someone believes that a curse will come true, this faith can, in fact, shape their actions and decisions, leading to results that confirm their beliefs. It is almost a dance between belief and reality, where the power of the mind is immense. Furthermore, the relevance of curses and prophecies is not limited to entertainment. They are also used as metaphors in social and political discussions. In various cultures, we speak of the curse of success or the curse of resources, which reflect how abundance can bring unexpected problems. These narratives help us better understand the complexities of contemporary society, revealing the interconnection between past events and their repercussions in the present. Finally, it is necessary to recognize that, although science advances and logic prevails, the legacy of curses and prophecies continues to remind us of the fragility of the human condition. They teach us about the uncertainty of life and the relentless search for meaning. As I address these topics, I invite you to reflect on your own beliefs and how they shape your life. After all, in a world that constantly seeks answers, stories of curses and prophecies offer us a window into understanding not only the past, but also our present and future.